I'm really excited to have my good friend Dr. Nelson Vazquez, who I've kind of met over the last year or two on social media as a primary care doc, and heard much about his story about weight loss and disease elimination, and I've been chatting quite a bit over the last year, and I'm really excited to have him on the show today on Carnivore Conversations. Dr. Nelson Vazquez, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great.
And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what do you do for a day job, and how you got into this crazy keto carnivore world?
All right. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. Went to college in Puerto Rico, partly California. Went back to Puerto Rico. Went to medical school over there, and graduated. This year will be 40 years ago in December.
Wow.
And went and did more specialty residency training in family medicine in New York, in Long Island. And after that, moved to Massachusetts for 8 years. Was too cold for me. Moved to Florida, and I've been here 28 years. This last month, it was 28 years. Yes.
And I went from Los Angeles. Let's see, I graduated medical school in 1985 and residency in 1990. So we're pretty close on our time frame. And then I moved from California about 30 years ago to upstate New York. So I went from the sun to the cold. You went from the cold to the sun.
I spent a year and a half in Riverside, California.
Oh, perfect. Hot as could be, right?
Yeah, desert.
And tell us a little bit about your health journeys and what you've gone through over the years and how you've found this world of keto carnivore.
All right. So I've always been on the heavier side. During high school and college years, I did play several sports, but I always struggled with weight. And after medical school and after getting married, which was also 40 years ago, I read an Atkins diet book. I think it was 1992. I think it was one of the editions that came. I think there was an edition that came that year. And I was so hooked, line and sinker on low carb since then, since the Atkins diet. I always recommended it to my patients, especially patients with diabetes, but maybe didn't always follow myself. And I had ballooned up to about 320 pounds around that time, 91, 92. And I lost and gained 20 or 40 pounds. I would go off the diet and regain it. Back in the 70s and 80s, I also did all kinds of diets. My mother had been on Weight Watchers, so we also did the Cambridge diet and several other shakes, have 2 shakes and 1 sensible meal at in the evening of different kinds. But almost any diet will work if you stick with it, right? But most of these diets had a problem with hunger. It didn't matter how long you had stayed on the diet, you would become hungry, and that would defeat the purpose. Anyways, fast forward the 90s, 2000, 2002, I had a 15-year-old. My son wanted to lose some weight. I had bought another edition of the Atkins diet. We read it together. We did it together. And again, we lost a significant amount of weight. Along those, just before, a few years before, I had become diabetic. Now, back then, even though I knew about low carb, I had never thought, because it's not what I was taught in medical school, that you could reverse diabetes and you could reverse high blood pressure and you could reverse a lot of things that I know for a fact, because I have reversed them, that you could reverse many of these chronic, so-called chronic progressive conditions. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I had again tried a keto diet. Interestingly enough, I have never had the keto flu. And I don't know if it's because I've been so often low carb and keto, but I've never experienced the keto flu. However, my wife does get it. So I don't know if it has anything to do with genetic makeup or something like that.
What do you think it is about the keto diet or Atkins diet was the key that got you to lose the weight and your son to lose the weight?
So carbohydrates make you lose weight, make you gain weight. Of course, if you restrict them, you lose weight. A lot of people, of course, since the 60s, we've been on this low-fat roller coaster, and it has worked very well, right? Because since the 70s, the pressure to go low-fat from even the government guidelines has been there, and the amounts of meat that we eat have gone down. The amounts of fat we eat have gone down. But heart attacks, the same curve, if you look at the same years, the heart attacks go up, the diabetes go up, the metabolic syndrome goes up, while we continue to be low fat. Low fat makes you sick.
Right. So your challenges through the years, diabetes, back issues, any other diseases that you suffered from personally that you've seen benefits by keto, and maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about carnivore and how you sort of ventured into that particular realm.
All right. So 21 months ago, I was 305, 310. I said, I got to do something. So I already knew what I had to do. I cut the carbs. I grew up in Puerto Rico. My basic healthy Puerto Rican diet would be rice and beans and all kinds of different roots with a little bit of steak and chicken. We did eat meat growing up. We also ate a lot of fake meat because we used to buy a lot of veggie meat, vegetarian, supposedly meat, which now I look at the ingredients and it's extremely ultra processed food. But I decided to go into keto. I had lost maybe about 20 pounds in 4 months. And I said, okay, I got to go stricter. And I did. I lost a few more pounds. Then in June of last year, 2023, I was diagnosed with macular edema. Now, I had my regular checkups for my eyes for many years, and it had never been a problem. But by that time, I had been almost 2 years on a GLP-1 receptor agonist. This particular one was Trulicity, but all of them can cause macular edema, and they can cause gastroparesis or gastroparesis, however you like to say it, which I also developed. My A1C had been before and after the same. My weight had been before and after the same, so it didn't help me for anything it's supposed to help me, and gave me 2 bad side effects. My daughter-in-law was pregnant at the time with my grandson, who's going to be, in 11 months, he will be a year. In 11 days, sorry.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes. and you're about to.
I'm about to be a grandfather for the first time in about I think in about 6 months. So very excited about that.
You think you might know how you're gonna feel? I can tell you, you don't know anything. Just wait until it hits you. But it's a great feeling. So, anyways, I said no. I got to see my grandson. So for the next 2 weeks, I did a lot of research. I already knew about people being carnivore. I thought it was a little bit crazy. People like Dr. Kiltz eating. And I said at the end of June, I said, I'm going for it. And so at that point, I had already lost on keto about 45 to 48 pounds. By the end of February, I had been very close to 200. I have been fluctuating about 200 right now. But that's 120 pounds for my heaviest, over 100 pounds in 14 months that I was able to lose. So, but it's not only the weight loss. I had been on 300 milligrams of metoprolol, which is a very high dose of blood pressure medication. I was also on lisinopril, 40 milligrams, maximum dose of blood pressure medication. And I'm no longer on any medicine since last February. I don't need it. And I just took my blood pressure the other day, yesterday, I think, 123. I had plantar fasciitis, I had reflux, I had 4 different causes for neuropathy, including a stroke. I had B12 deficiency, spinal stenosis, and a stroke I had 6 years ago.
Wow.
So all of those gave me numbness, tingling. I still have it, but a lot less symptoms. No blood pressure medicine, no reflux medicine. Plantar fasciitis that I had been suffering for over 30 years is gone. I have been able to stop 7 different prescription medications. I was using 300 units of insulin.
Wow.
Just before I started to be able to eat the way I was eating, which included, even if you think the rice and beans and the roots might be healthy, of course, I was also eating the apple fritter or the donuts or the other stuff. So I'm off of a bunch of medications, reverse multiple things. I would say I'm still diabetic, although my A1C is 5.4.
So when you say, I think I'm still diabetic, which part of you still has some diabetic side effects?
So I don't have any side effects from it, but my pancreas, after 29 years, has been exhausted. So it's not producing as much insulin, endogenous insulin. My C-peptide last December was low. So I still use a small amount of insulin because my pancreas is not putting out all the amount of insulin that I would need. Otherwise, even though for the past, we're in September, so 9 months, I've been for up to 4 months without even taking insulin, but then my blood sugar is a little bit higher than I would like. And the same way I tell my patients, keep it under 100. Well, I didn't want to see it racing. So I use a small amount of insulin. So I did do antibodies. There are 4 types of antibody tests that you can do. They're all negative. So it's not that I have any autoimmune issue. It's not type 1. It's not bladder. It's just type 2 with pancreas exhaustion.
What do you think is the thing that we're missing in medicine as doctors and practitioners that we're failing our brothers and sisters around the globe with our dietary advice?
Many things. One of the problems I would say is sometimes we lost somewhere along the way. We might lose. I have probably, maybe I lost it, I regained it. The curiosity about learning about, wait a second, this is that way, let me investigate. We might get into a habit of just, you got a problem, I got a pill for that. Oh, you have this problem, I have a pill for that. And sometimes we may get into the practice of medicine just as soon as we hear the complaint, oh, I got a pill for that. And sometimes when you practice that way, you end up putting your patient on multiple medications. Then they develop side effects from being on those medications. Then you have to put them on more medication to try to revert this problem. And I think sometimes lack of curiosity, maybe it doesn't happen at the beginning of your career, but that might be one of the problems. The other big problem is insurance. I actually, interestingly enough, has been not reprimanded, but constantly getting letters for years from insurance company. Oh, you didn't put this patient on a statin. Even though I didn't know even then what I know now, I was never a knee-jerk reaction statin prescriber.
Mm-hmm. The practice, the methods that were taught, there's a best practices in medicine, and we're scored according to how we add up to our colleagues in prescribing the medications for the diagnosis and disease, and maybe we're scored lower if a particular diagnosis doesn't come with enough proper prescriptions. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, certainly. And we fall for the influence in many ways, more not only from the insurance companies, but when you go to a medical conference, for example, they're sponsored usually by who? By the pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. And there might not be an implicit bias on the speaker, for example, who's going to talk about this subject, but it always looms, the company that's paying me has this product. Maybe I shouldn't talk too badly about their product. I think it's the view is a little bit slanted sometimes, even if it's not intentional, because I can't believe 100% of the time things like that might be intentional. I think many of us got into medicine to try to help people.
And then it's sort of a little bit of rat race to get to see all the patients in the 15 minutes or less that we have been allotted in order to keep you moving forward. And it's sort of problem based, and then it's pill proposed as the method, and then they come back in a few months, and as you said, you have another symptom, usually secondary to the pills you've been taking, and we've got another pill for that one.
Yeah, I compare it to when the smartphones started to come out, and people, I have an app for that, and I have an app for this, and I have, sometimes we might get into the practice of, I got a pill for that. So I try to avoid doing that. Try to listen to the patients. I spend too long with the patients always, but.
Well, I think that's, I almost went into family medicine. I went to UC Davis Medical School. Actually, I almost went to Albany Med, and then got accepted at Davis and drove right back to California. And it was very big on family practice and small town medicine. And that's what I really loved. And I thought that's what I was going to do. And then I found OBGYN, which I thought, wow, this is really great because I was not only a mechanic, but I used my touchy-feely skills and talk about primary care quite a bit. And then I actually ended up a year of internal medicine. I really loved that. But I realized that all I was doing was writing a prescription for the diagnosis of disease. And isn't it true that we really never learned the causes of disease and the prevention of disease? And I'm wondering if the problem is we really believe that it's all linked to your genetics and it's just going to happen no matter what you do.
Well, we certainly learned a little bit about genetics, right? First year of medical school usually is teaching you the normal anatomy and physiology, the normal biochemistry, the normal biology of the body, and then examples of how it goes wrong or where it goes wrong. Maybe not so much the how, which is probably where the cause of disease is. And we certainly don't spend enough time in nutrition. I don't remember a nutrition class. Of course, it's been 40 years since I was in medical school, but I don't remember a nutrition class. Somewhere along the line, I learned about calories, 9 calories on each gram of fat, or 4 calories each gram of protein and carbohydrates. But I mean, we learned the Krebs cycle. I remember that. But I don't really remember having a nutrition class per se.
I was actually a nutritional biochemistry major in undergrad, along with some marine biology. And I thought by learning all the biochemical pathways, then you understand nutrition. But is it easier than we think, or is it more complicated than we think? Or we don't think and we don't know?
Is it simpler or more complicated than what? I'm sorry?
Than we think. It's sort of that science. We learn science. We learn the anatomy and the biochemistry and the metabolic processes. Yet we still don't really understand. Well, why did some people gain weight and they don't eat as much calories as the other person? Or why does someone get these diseases and other people don't?
It can be, I guess you could make it complicated or you could make it simple. Past year and a half, not only I've gone through that transition in my personal medical problems, but I decided to go back to school. I've spent really hundreds, if not thousands of hours already studying and reviewing and getting certified. I'm certified now by Low Carb USA and Metabolic Health Practitioners, the Society, and Nutrition Network. Now, on the other hand, it's very simple. If you want to explain to the patient, which I'm at the moment more interested in reversing disease than, if you're doing fine and you're healthy, you just continue doing what you're doing. But I am very interested in reversing diabetes and fatty liver. And I've had a couple of patients with PCOS, by the way. And I know one of them a few weeks ago, she had done keto. And when I spoke to her for a while, she said, oh, okay. Well, I explained in more detail the insulin, testosterone, estrogen problems in PCOS. And second time I saw her, she had lost some weight. She was doing better. And I'm yet to see her another time. But I'm very interested in trying to reverse disease. And sometimes if you explain it to patients in a simple way, they do understand it. Because most of the time, if I ask a patient what causes diabetes, and some of them might not know how to answer, but everything starts with what you eat and how much of it you eat, right? Now we think chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption is going to give you a lot of insulin, and we have a chain of events. And a lot of people don't realize the same chain of events happens with heart attacks and strokes, and we've been blaming the fat for what the carbohydrates and the sugar have done. So it also takes a little bit of shift in your thinking of what causes disease. Now, truly, we still don't know. I'm on the side where eating too much, especially sugar, processed foods, vegetable seed oils, all these things that are human made and not real food, probably is the major cause of most chronic non-communicable diseases.
Who are some of the influencers in the space of keto carnivore that you've learned for, and anyone in particular, or their ideas that you think would be helpful to some of our listeners?
I encourage anyone who is thinking about this to definitely dive in. But a year and a half ago, I started looking at people. I discovered very quickly Dr. Berry and Dr. Vazquez, Dr. Boss, Dr. Kiltz, Dr. Chafee, Dr. Eric Westman. I had read a book by him. I didn't even know it was his. I thought it was Atkins, but he wrote in 2010 at the new Atkins for the new year or something like that. I thought it was an Atkins book, and I had the book. When I got to see, okay, it's Dr. Eric Westman. I like also his approach, his very academic approach. He doesn't like to endorse things that haven't had, randomized controlled trials behind it. And, he's an academic mostly, although he still sees patients. And he likes to have the proof before he endorses things. But I don't know if you have noticed or if you see him much over the past year, he's become more open to carnivore, even though we don't have a lot of studies behind it.
That's one of the toughest things, because I was actually talking to a group of doctors last night, and the conversation was mostly on a plant-based Mediterranean diet, and there are plenty of adequate studies that tell us that that's the right diet. And carnivore was just like out of like, no. And I find in general that we in medicine, and I've been that way in the past, and I think I'm less that way today, is if it's not a prospective randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study in a prestigious journal, whatever that means, then it's not good science and it's quackery. And it was kind of interesting because I sort of suggested, well, I'm wondering if that's our particular problem in science and medicine, is that what defines a prestigious journal? What gets accepted to that? Are there biases? And is it possible that our bias, because we all like a Mediterranean diet, because it allows us to have kind of whatever we want, balanced, some alcohol, some sweets and treats from time to time, and we're more accepting of that because we kind of think, our patients aren't going to change their diet, and diet doesn't really matter in this. What are your thoughts on the ability of we doctors, scientists, to be open and unbiased?
I think we all have some bias when we advise patients, and that depends on our personal experiences and what we've gathered from here and there. I think a lot of patients like variety, right? The Mediterranean diet, if there's one. I don't know if there's one or just 100, 200 different, because along the Mediterranean, there are differences in the way people do eat, and I don't know if there's anyone, but it's probably the variety that we're used to eating that attracts a lot of people to something like the Mediterranean diet. One of the criticisms of people who are carnivore is that it's too restricting.
Dr. Rob Kiltz, another beautiful, spectacular day. And I just want to send thanks to all those for watching the newest episode of Carnivore Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms to gain access to the full 1-hour episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more to come. God bless.